Hi everybody, I'm Nicole Bostel, Director of Communications here at STEM, and I'm joined by Mr. Ryan Alsup, the head of our security team. We wanted to take a moment today to talk about some of the safety and security measures at our school. We've already had 2 drills that we've gone through, and of course we had a minor incident yesterday on campus, and so that's obviously brought up a lot of questions, especially from our new families who are joining us. So we wanted to make sure that we reviewed some things, but then also tried to touch on a couple of areas that might have come up with questions over the past day or so. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions of Mr. Alsup, and so we hope that this is great information for you guys. So Mr. Alsup, I wanted to talk first about we obviously drill following the standard response protocol, and there's 5 areas: fire evacuation, we have a shelter in place, a hold, secure, and then lockdown. So we've already done a fire evacuation drill, which is pretty standard. All schools do it, and most of us who have been through the school system have all done it. Yeah. But tell me a little bit about, or let's talk a little bit about the secure, because there's a difference between secure and lockdown.
Yeah, thank you very much. So as mentioned, we do drill everything, and before I go into details, if anybody wants to see more information, you can go to the I Love You Guys website and you can see the standards response protocol printed out there. So a secure is a drill or a safety situation that we'd enter if there is police action in the area, or if there is, and it can be police action. Sometimes it might be, I've put schools on the secure for bear in the outside of the school, or there's other things too that we would use this for. But the idea of secure is that we're making sure that all of our doors on the outside are closed and locked, which they are every day anyway, but also that we're preventing people from coming inside. When you're on a secure, you're still running class as usual, but the potential threat is something on the outside, and we just want to make sure we're keeping our kids in place. Here at STEM, of course, we have some students that are in the COSON building for some of their classes, as well as down below. If we entered a secure, they would stay in their respective buildings so that they're safe and not going outside. So we drill that multiple times throughout the year so that our students are ready to go with that when needed.
Yep. So one of the other ones that we drill on, which we had one today, was the lockdown drill. We did a modified version of that today. So we did have the Douglas County Sheriff's Office team here, or the district security team. I know we did that as a means to prepare for that larger kind of lockdown drill that we do later on this semester. But talk a little bit about that lockdown drill and why it's different from secure.
So lockdown is for your worst case scenario, that there's some type of a threat within the building. And so lockdowns, of course, for us are critical. A couple things with lockdowns that we talk to our kids and our staff about is that it's the process they need to follow is run, hide, and fight. So the idea is that if we go into a lockdown, or if there's a threat in the school, or sometimes, honestly, the lessons learned through these drills are good. If they're out in community, say grocery stores or theaters or other places where things have happened, we want to make sure that they remember the actual protocols so that they can react whatever the situation is. So the idea of running is of course, get yourself safe. Hide, that's when we actually lock the classroom doors, and our students in a lockdown we'll lock the classroom doors, they turn off the lights, and the students are huddled in a corner out of the vision from the doors and any windows that might be in that room. The idea, of course, is that if there's a threat in the building, we need to buy those valuable minutes until law enforcement is able to take care of that threat for us. And so when we do a lockdown, thankfully at this school we have some automated systems to make this more routine, and so there's a repeated voice that goes over the intercom that is lockdown, locks lights out of sight. So it's really clear on what they need to do. Anybody knows what to do when they hear that. And because we follow the standards response protocol, substitutes or anybody else that come into our building, they've all been trained on this, because this is something that is used statewide, and it is also the language that our law enforcement uses when they come in. So it does help us make sure that we're on the same page with everybody else, and when you're in an emergency situation, obviously all of that is critical. So we drill, the district requires a few different drills, and they come with law enforcement and district security. However, here at STEM we want to make sure that we're doing more than that, which is why we did one today.
And I would also say one of the reasons why we did this modified drill today too is that sometimes there are slight modifications to the actual drill.
Yep.
And before we have district security here on site, and that is essentially, looking at our performance and giving us pointers, we want to make sure that our students know what those modifications are. And we get a lot of input from our SRO Deputy Gabe, who's also on the security team, who weighs in. And then we also have a very good working and close relationship with district security, so they also come in. And whenever we have any questions, specifically teachers have questions about what do I do in my classroom, or staff, hey, I have this particular office, what's the best location? We have really good resources to ask that question, to ask them to. So I wanted to just touch briefly on the incident that happened yesterday morning. We have had, just to be expected, concerned parents that are reaching out because, when you see something like that, any type of police presence on a campus, you see somebody who is interacting with a law enforcement officer, or you also see an individual who is acting out of character, it can cause alarm. And we have had some questions as to why didn't we go into any one of our drill postures or into one of our standard response postures. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to just kind of shed some light on that as to, why we wouldn't have done anything like that.
Okay, so great question. So in yesterday's event, the person that entered into the building was immediately confronted by our administration and security staff and our SRO almost immediately. So the person themselves never entered beyond the entryway, and so we were able to stop that person there. We also immediately, when we're working with that, we were making decisions as we go, but we recognized that because that person was confronted and because we had that person with us, that there was no need to elevate that. However, in a hypothetical situation, if somebody were to enter our building and we were not able to catch them, that's when we would look at doing additional type of security measures. But in this particular case, our students were never at risk, they were never at harm, and so we made the decision to go ahead and continue with business as usual while the authorities were taking care of that situation.
And some might ask that question, how did we know that nobody was at harm? And I guess how I would, and you can let me know also, this was an individual that had been in our building as part of the independent security firm that is helping us manage and run the Evolve system, and that it was somebody that was known to us, and it was somebody that would work the morning shift, and so it was a more visual type of, oh, hey, what are you doing here? I didn't think you were going to be working this morning, and so there was that first initial interaction with the individual to say, hey, what you doing here, and trying to assess the situation. And then once it was really determined, hey, he really wasn't supposed to be here, and hey, let's try and figure out how do we get the right people here, and also then get him outside of the building so that he's not a continued disruption to the flow of students coming into the building.
And that's correct. And honestly, because of that, and that, we know who the person is, so we knew the person wasn't a threat. But also, I can't stress enough, immediately, law enforcement, our own Deputy Gabe was there on the spot immediately. And so once he is there and he's taking control of a scene like that, we know that that if there was a threat, that he had it under control. But in this particular case, because we knew who the person was, we knew that there wasn't a threat to be had there. So, but anyway, but our layers of security worked yesterday, and I think that's the part that I want to make sure that we're continuing to highlight, is our layers of security worked, and this is why we have these processes in place, is to make sure that we do keep our kids' risk level down. So that worked very well yesterday. It was a success.
So what I want to just say, you mentioned layers of security, and then we'll kind of wrap up here. So here at STEM, we obviously have a multitude of security features. There are some that we can share, and then there are others that we don't like to share because it could potentially put our security plans at risk. But for instance, we do have ballistic film that is known. That's on all of our windows on the outside. We do have multiple layers of badging to get into the building. Everybody who comes in does get raptored through our security system. Another layer is the Evolve screening system, and that screens for weapons. So then we also are trained. All of our staff get trained, but then also our administrators get additional training. We have a campus security guard, and then we also have our deans who assist with our administration team with any type of incident. We have a school resource officer, and so those are the things that we can talk about. We also have a multitude of cameras everywhere. So these are all layers of our security system that we want to make sure that our community knows about. So with that, we want to thank you so much for tuning in. We hope that this answers some questions. We want to continue to keep this dialogue open with our community. We also want to have you guys reach out to us or connect with us on our social media channels. Or you can also email us at communications@stemk12.org if you have any specific questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.